Welcome everyone. Today we are going to be looking at Dassault Systems CATIA. This is going to be a very basic introductory video on how to use part design. Now my channel, you can see, I've got some videos going back to 2009, some real snippety back before the talkies. And we've been doing CATIA for a really long time, but this is 3D experience. So it's kind of the new system from Dassault. Not everybody in the world is gravitating over to it yet. Of course, the large companies, aerospace, automotive, they're still sticking with V5 and even some V4 because you just have to. But we want to take a look at this, but it's still at its core a basics of 3D technical design. Now, we'll go ahead and get started. So we click the button up here. It's just recently kind of been prettied up, but you come up to the top here, you hit this, and it's going to open the bar on the side, and we scroll down, and we're going to find part design. I happen to have mine here in favorites. You can drag the icons down below here, up here into favorites, so you don't have to go dig for them all the time. I'm going to go ahead and click on part design and then tell you what we're going to be doing in this video. When it comes to technical design as opposed to more of the sculpting type work that you do with, say, Autodesk Maya, 3D Studio Max, and those types of deals, this is about accuracy in your design, and mainly it's just about dimensions. If you're using one of the sculpting apps, you're usually just kind of wrangling it around until it sort of looks good. You put a little envelope around it that maybe has a certain size, and you kind of maybe go off of that for scale, but you're not getting down to thousandths or sub-thousandths of an inch dimensions, which we do here. So anybody coming from that world looking at this is quite boring, I'd probably say, in contrast, but it's about that level of accuracy. Now over here on the side, we have our specification tree. And we want to keep an eye on this. When we first start making a part, things are going to collapse up here. And we want to make sure we come over here and open up the plus sign. I'll mention that again. Now, 3D Experience has all of the icons down here along the bottom on this ribbon. You can kind of, you can tear away the tabs here if you like, but you can make more stuff. So if you're familiar with CATIA V5 and you want that experience of being able to just drag your icons and crap anywhere you want, you don't exactly get that, but you can make a new section, they call it, and you can drag that around. We'll do maybe a video on that sometime. But the rest of it is all pretty much the same. Now, looking at my screen, though, I've changed the interface a lot because we're at this transitional point, and maybe I want to blame it on a transitional point, but honestly, I like this look better. It's the V5 look. Somewhere up under preferences, you can go there and you can change this stuff out and you can get it to look this way. You have to do a few more things. It's probably about 10 different sections you got to go to get it to look the right way, let's say, but you do what you want to do. For right now, this is the look that I have. So then what we're going to do beyond this is we're going to go ahead and we're going to start with a two-dimensional sketch, because in technical design, that's the way this works. You don't start with primitives so much and then just create kind of a fabric around them and start pulling it. You start with one two-dimensional sketch on a plane, and right now all we have are these planes right here in the center to work with. We can make or get more later. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about dimensioning a sketch. We're going to talk about the extruding of this, turning it into a solid, putting holes through it, and kind of prettying it up a little bit. So those are sort of the real quick basics we'll be doing here. But then we'll also, along the way, be talking about how you build your models a little bit more properly, let's say. We could call it optimization or organization. And it's really about some of the about using a lot of the extra tools that are available to us to maybe link things together or use different types of folders, if you will, to keep things kind of clean, so you or your coworkers that might work on this later, you have something that makes a little bit more sense. So here's what's going on. First, we're going to come over here and we're going to rename this, which I'm going to try to let go all the weird oddities from V5 that they're doing here with this, but you come to the main product. So this is basically like you're already starting an assembly, but we're building a part. So don't sweat that right now. And I'm going to call this, well, Well, it's going to be die. It's going to be, we're going to make one um, half of a dice. We're gonna make a game die. And the reason for that is mainly we need something to do. We need something that's kind of a simple shape, and then something that's got a little bit more repetition to it, so that we could get kind of build on our skills a little bit at this point. And it gives me, this particular product gives me a few things to talk about on the optimization concept that I was talking about. Then first, let's look again down here at the toolbar. If you come down here, we've got standard, we got essentials. I think it usually defaults to hanging out under essentials, but understand this. The essentials toolbar is Dassault's made up toolbar for the things that they believe that you are going to use most frequently. So when you look at this, if this is your first look at 3D experience coming from V5, don't think that they just got rid of some stuff because you don't see it here. Know that if you go under model, then we see that there's a pad, and then you get a drop up arrow here, and you get pad, pocket, drafted fillet, and all these other things, but you don't see them necessarily up here on this tab, all right? And that's kind of frustrating in itself, but that's just because it's, in a way, new software. You got to figure out where all this stuff is hiding. So for the most part, I think we'll kind of stick on essentials when for just grabbing the tools, because that's just really want to talk about what I want to talk about in this. There's so many threads of, you know, tangential conversation that we could have every single video I do talking about this stuff, because one thing breeds another thing. But just know what I said, that we'll stick with this. Every now and again I'll show you where the actual default location is. And then on top of it, later when I mentioned, later down the road, when you want to make your own sections up here, your own toolbars, it kind of throws this all out the window anyways. So to get started, let's just get to it. We're going to go over here to the sketch icon. You click it, and then you're going to get this new little animation. It's going to light up. Pick your XY plane. So that was this plane over here on the side. And then anyways, then it rolls up into your face here, and then you can see the grid lines. I can't say I'm real thrilled about the animation yet on this. It's a little bit slow, but you can turn it off if you like. Then looking again down at the bottom bar, we're now in Sketch, which used to be called Sketcher. So if I say Sketcher, hey, look, it's still called Sketcher. There it is up there. Good. I was worried they changed the name. Anyways, this is the Sketcher environment. It's not just a little plane that just popped out of nowhere for you to do a little bit of something to. It's in itself a different workbench, CATIA lingo, for a place with a whole bunch of icons. Now, if you look here, we've got our typical kind of polyline, which they call a profile tool. We've got rectangular type tools here and other things in there. We've got circle tools. We've got lines, points, splines, etc., and a couple other specialty shaped icons here, like a keyhole tool. I'm assuming it's still here somewhere. But what I want to focus on right now is just the squares. And I'm not even going to hit all of them. Maybe I'll blip through them really fast. We've got the regular rectangle tool that probably most people in CAD have grabbed, and it works like this. You click one time here, you wiggle it out, and then you click again and it solidifies. The problem frequently with this is that if you want to center this, which is what I find myself doing primarily, probably mostly, because most of the parts, at least at this kind of stage, they start out to be symmetrical. To constrain this, you have to go through a fair amount of effort. So you come down here and you find this icon here that says constraint, the blue one, and if you look close, it's got the little dimensioning lines on it. I pick this and I say, okay, well, I want to dimension this. So that's fine, and I make this maybe be 100. And then come up here, and then I make this one be 100. We have this new contextual menu, by the way, so it pops out when you click something, and you go, oh, there's that constraint thing in. Let's use that. Click that, and then say 100. And then we look at this, and it's all off-centered. So then your next thought is, oh, yep, of course, I have to go click constraints, and I have to go to the vertical right there, or, well, they say horizontal because reasons. It's kind of twisted around. But I click here, and now I have to go, well, it's half of 100, so I'm going to make that be 50, and then I'm going to do the same thing from the other side. From here to here, pick that, and get my constraints back out here the right way. Pick that and go 50. And now I have a centered rectangle, and it's fully constrained. So when you look at this, you see it's all green. It's all green, and there's actually a point in the center there that you can't quite exactly tell, but if you could zoom in and it would actually zoom into the point, you would see that it's green also, because everything is locked in place. They call it iso-constrained, as in equally constrained everywhere, and it can't move. This is what you want to do with every single sketch. If you've watched any of my Fusion 360 videos or any of the CAD videos, we're always talking about that. So we go ahead and we could exit out here, and then we could thicken this thing up, right? You hit your pad icon down here and hit OK, and now we have this solid. All right. Now we're going to go back and we're going to do it a few more times in different ways, but I just want to show you, kind of get to the end here and show you what the end product is. We're trying to make a block of sorts. It also gives me a chance to tell you about the movement keys. If this is a little bit new for you, if you look at your mouse and you've got your, you say your left mouse, and then the middle mouse is the wheel, and then the right click button there. If we just number them across and say 1, 2, 3, a lot of the technical design books just number them like that. So the middle mouse wheel, the mouse button, the middle one, is button number 2. And you should be able to press it. I have ran across a few mice out there that the middle scroll wheel doesn't actually press like a button, which was kind of shocking to me because I thought that would be default. At any rate, the middle mouse click button, if you hold it in, you're going to get pan. So that's pan like this. And then if you hold down the middle again, button number 2, and hold down button number 3, then you're going to rotate. So that's the middle and the right mouse, and then it rotates around, okay? Now here's the part that's kind of weird. You would be expecting the scroll wheel itself to scroll, zoom in and out, but what it does is it scrolls the tree over here, and there's a good reason for that. They did change it here, which is kind of a bummer also in 3D Experience, that if I scroll over here in this area, it doesn't do anything. I actually have to be within this boundary over here to get the tree to scroll. It was a very sensible thing they did. Once I don't know, like I was going to say you get used to it, but that's kind of the same with everything. But here's my point. If you want to zoom, you middle mouse and then you tap the third. You just tap it, and look at my cursor. It's got it's a up and down arrowheads there, and then you push the whole mouse forward and backwards. And I know everybody's got their way of doing things, and you go yeah, whatever you get used to. But my take on this was the speed. The scroll wheel, you'd scroll if you want to get zoomed way in. And if you're just dealing with little parts, that's no big deal. But if you're working on a car or a plane, you kind of want to be able to zoom in, zoom out, and do it really quickly. And so that's very efficient. And it was kind of nice then, if your tree over here was getting to be extra large, you could just scroll your mouse and it would move. But apparently you still got to move your mouse over in that area. Okay, and just because I noticed it over here, because we made this part, hit the plus sign. Always hit the plus sign over there so we can watch and see what we're doing. So then let's rewind everything and get back to just the sketch so I can talk about that again. But before I do that, I wanted to show you. I could just Control Z and undo and get back to, before we padded this thing up. But what you can also do is you come over here and you can hit the plus sign. You see that there's a pad, and then the sketch is underneath. The sketch is the parent of the pad, and it gets absorbed underneath. And this is a really good way that CATIA works with their data, this kind of aggregating elements to a degree. Now, if I want to get rid of the pad, let's say, which is what I want to do, I can come down here and I can hit delete, and it's going to ask you, do you want to get rid of all the aggregated elements? If I do that, it's going to get rid of the sketch also. But I can leave it there. I can uncheck that and then hit OK, and it will leave the sketch in place. Okay. So then go ahead and double click on the sketch, and we're back in this environment. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And I want to talk some more about the dimensions themselves and the sketch tools. So let's say I'm looking at these dimensions here, and I decide that I want to make a change because I just made this part and come to find out it was a little bit too small. So I come up here and I double click this and I change it to say 110. Well, now you notice maybe, a handful of things are going to have to happen now, because now I change it to 110. I'm going to have to come over here and change this one to 110. I'm going to have to take half of 110 and change these guys over to 55, and then change this one over here to 55, and so on and so forth. Okay, so you can probably see that that's a little bit tedious. And think about it also this way. All this stuff that I'm going to talk about today is more than just this little part that we're talking about. Imagine we had many sketches that were like this, many different features in this large part or assembly that we're working on, and we wanted to make a change. So now I have to go to every single one of these sketches here, and I've got to change all my dimensions on all the various ones just because maybe the thing didn't fit quite right where it was supposed to. So to make things a little bit better, we want to link some of these dimensions. And so the way we do this is, let's say this one right here, let's say that this one and this one down here, right? So this dimension right here, they have a relationship, right? This one here is always half of that one. So let's work with that. So what we can do is we can come over here to the 55 dimension currently, and I can double click it. And then what you do, Fusion 360 might have a leg up on this. You just go click the other dimension and rip and tear. This one, you hit the equal sign, and then you click on the background, and it says, please select the parameter to associate. You actually could have probably just went usually and just go pick the dimension itself. So I picked this one right here, and now it says that 55 is the same as the 110. That's not what we want, but that's the beginning of this. So we come over here, and then you go to the FX. So we have this right here. It brings you to the formula editor, and it might look a little bit weird right off the get-go, but what we're looking at here is every dimension, every ability that you've done so far, everything, every point, all the you know, right here we've got verticals and horizontals. They went in automatically. You didn't do that, but they're in here. What we're concerned about is this right here, where it says part body sketch 1 offset 8 offset is equal to this. So that's what we just told it to do. Don't forget about the little equals over here. And so if we open up the sketch over on the side and we go to constraints, you'll see more or less what it's talking about. Scoot this out of the way. It says that offset number 8 right down there, that offset is equal to length 6 length right there. So all you have to do is come in here and say divide by 2 or times by 0.5. Either way you want to do that, and then hit OK, and then we just made a nice little formula. You can pretty much do whatever kind of algebra that you want in that thing to get your model to work how you want. So hit OK, and that's good. And then we can go ahead and do it for the next one as well. So again, you hit equals, and then pick the thing that it's equal to, edit the formula, go right here, and then say, you know, divide by 2. You can do that. Right? So then now if I were to change any one of these, 110 to 200, then these values go along with. And then this one right up here, the same thing if I were to change it. The reason this is extra valid is, what if, you know, you wanted to change this to 202.35 whatever, right? You can just go ahead and do that, and this is going to do the math for us, right? So that's very nice. It's already centered. One last little problem right here, or thing to deal with, is I changed this, but now I got to change this too. And as far as a design decision goes, you might have to talk with some other people about this in your team, and ask questions like, these currently are the same. It was 100 by 100. Is that always going to change? Both together? Are they always going to be the same? If I change one, will the other side change? And if they say, yeah, absolutely, they're always going to be the same. We might get bigger, might get smaller, but they're always going to be the same. Good, cool. So then what you can say is this dimension right here is equal to that dimension right there. And now we have a thing here that is always centered no matter what we do. So if I change this to 506.32, then there you go. There's our square. Okay. So that's a bit about formulas. What I'm going to do now, though, is I'm going to go ahead and get rid of all of this and delete it. And it tells you, oops, there's some formulas that just got broken. That's fine. and I want to show you the other square. So if you go down here under rectangle, there's a centered rectangle, and this is actually going to get rid of a whole lot of what we just did. But know that we did that for the experience of formulas, all right? So it wasn't like I ran you down a long rabbit hole for the hell of it. You go here, you pick the center point. So this is looking for a center point. So I snap right onto the middle there. You probably can't quite see that, but it's a circle with a dot in the center. One click, don't drag it, just let go and then drag the square out. What I mean is don't hold the button while you drag. Then click, and now we have a square. But what we have is a centered rectangle. So no matter what, it's already, the sides, top and bottom, they're already going to be symmetrical. So that whole 55, whatever, half of this thing, we don't have to do that. So this is probably my, this is probably the rectangle I use most frequently, but it does depend upon what kind of situation you're in. So if I want to do the same thing all over again for review, we could click on this, contextual menu comes out here. I can pick constraint. I could click here like this. I can make it 100. Zoom in a touch, pick this one right here, contextual menu, click that, pick this, and I can hit enter and then double click it because I can't, for some reason, there's some kind of a glitch going on that I can't hit equals in that little window, but I can do it right here like so. Okay, so now that's 100 by 100 and that's it. It's already green, you see? It's already ISO constrained. So that helped a ton by just using the centered rectangle. So scoot, oh, I hate that thing. Did you see that, by the way? See that? If you don't grab this right, then it starts to bring out the ruler. And as of yet, I have not found where that is in order to be able to turn it off. That's what I was trying to do. So be careful how you grab these arrows. So then really briefly, before I leave this, I think I'll just shoot down here and show you some of these other little shapes. For the most part, I'll do this one time, but then the other times, if you see some other little shapes, it's pretty much easy. It's pretty easy enough to just grab them, click them, and see what they do. So the oriented rectangle works like this. You click, and it makes a line, and then you click again, and then you bring it out like this. This is good for making diamond shapes or anything where this auto horizontal vertical square that's made there isn't good for you, and you don't want to have to make the square and delete all the constraints and turn it sideways. This is good for that. So get rid of that. So that's oriented rectangle. And then your parallelogram, click, click, and then it's kind of the same way, but you can move it around like so. Then lastly, we have this centered parallelogram, which is kind of different. It's kind of different. So I could have a line like, say, like this, because maybe this is the edge of something, and then over here is something else, I guess. In practical use, I don't know when I use this. I usually just grab the profile tool and draw the shape I want, but check this out. So I hit that, and then I pick this line, and I pick this line, and now look. See what's going on here? So it's making a parallelogram based upon the angles of those two shapes right there, you see? So play around with that, see if that could be helpful to you somewhere. All right, I've got a handful of things still left to go here. So I want to talk more about the organization of this and those formulas and another level of this called parameters. But first, I want to show you a couple other things here in Sketcher that might help you out a little bit. So if you notice, everything's kind of crooked. Somewhere along the line, I kind of oopsed it just a little bit. I turned it just a touch, right? Well, it's kind of good to show you this anyways, but that you see that we're still in 3D space. We're just on this plane floating out here. So if you do get it twisted, don't be afraid to just, well, one, just leave it that way and just work with it as is. It's a little bit disconcerting, but it's a really good skill to learn how to do that, because quite frequently when you have more things on the screen here, it's kind of hard to see through all the stuff straight on, so you have to kind of tip it. There'll be reasons. We'll just go with that, right? But if you do want to flatten it out, you come down here to normal view, the one with the little eyeball and the plane sticking out, you hit that and it will flatten it out. So then let's get out of here. So we come down here to the exit workbench. I'm going to say workbench. They're calling them apps. They've been workbenches forever. So you exit out of there, and it's currently blue because it's selected. If you click on the background, it turns white. So that's the default color of this based upon my color settings and V5 similarities, I guess, because that's in preferences. There's a V5 theme that you can do. So at any rate, just know that there is a color for being selected and a color that's not selected. And the reason I'm saying it this way, like it's important, is because it kind of is. That if I happen to have something selected and then I go to do something, it's going to try to do that thing to whatever is selected. And that might not be what you want to do currently. So as a habit, throughout these videos, you'll hear me say, click on the background, click on the background. So I'm telling you to deselect anything and then go do something. So it's a habit you should get into. So we'll come over here and we'll hit the pad. And now since we did deselect, if we didn't, it would already be in here. But since we did deselect, you come over here and you choose that, and then it's going to thicken it up. We want this to be one game die, so it's already 100 by 100 wide, so we're going to make it 100 tall or thick, or whichever way we want to think about that. So there's a block, and that's it, right? So that's kind of the thing done. Send it to the printer, right? And there you go. But what we want to do is we want to add a few more of those, the kind of formulaic elements to this to try to get it to work a little bit better for us. And what I mean, I guess, by work a little bit better for us, if I want to make a change to this, and again, imagine that this is a very complex part, and this tree over here, instead of just being a pad with a sketch underneath of it, it had many, 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 many things. And so I look at this, I'm like, okay, well, I want to make this, that, and the other thing a little bit bigger. Let's see, where are they at? And you have to dig and dig and dig and try to find them. So what we'll do is we'll find some of the critical measurements, that are important to us. Not every dimension in the world is always important to edit to make a change. What I mean is one thing will just follow another sometimes. But for this example, this cube, we want this to stay equal sides. We want everything to remain equal, and we want to be able to change it easy enough. And because it's supposed to be a game die, if I wanted to make this 50 or 10 or 100 or 1,000, whatever I wanted to make this, all the sides are going to be the same. And we have those in a couple different places. We've got our sketch over here. I can open that up and get back to here. So we've got 100 here and 100 here. So call that length and width if you want, I guess. But then the height of the whole thing is the pad right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to link all of those things together. And the way we are going to do that to make it nice and easy is we're going to create a thing called a parameter. Now notice over in my tree, after we made the formula for the sketch, it added that relation into the tree here. Now, yours might not show that. If I have a video out there, because I haven't put it up there yet, but I want to do an interface video on how to set this up. I did this same thing for Fusion 360, that for my videos, for my training environment, I want the look to be a certain way. So when I tell you the sketch should look green and that means ISO constrained, then everybody's is. The sketch should be white, that means it's just a sketch, then I want it to be that way. So by default, relations, parameters, constraints, there's certain things that don't show in the tree that they just felt, maybe people didn't need to see. So what you do is you come up here under your name up in the top right hand, and there's preferences. This is some weird stuff. There's preferences here, which is actually a button, but then the arrow that looks like that's exactly what you're supposed to pick, there's of course more stuff there. So this is legacy preferences, and then the other one back here is the new modern look of preferences. So whichever one you want, you can go to, and you can seemingly find everything in both places. So I'm going to go with legacy because I know where that is really quickly. Matter of fact, I was just here a minute ago, and so let me collapse this up and show you what I'm doing. You look up here, we've got general, so global kind of stuff, display parameters and measures, you can change there. If you come down here to infrastructure and you come to 3D shape infrastructure, honestly, I have no real big logic on how to tell you why that is, but again, it has to do with the whole system, not just the part design workbench. You come here and you go to the display tab. It kind of looks a little bit like the general tab, but go to the display tab and make sure all of these things are checked. That means that when we do parameters or relations, they will show up here in the tree. So once you do this, you hit OK. This should show up in the tree. If it doesn't, I don't know, it might be possible you might need to restart. So to kind of paint a picture for you really quickly, what we're going to do is we're going to make a thing. We're going to make a word. It's kind of like a variable. We're going to make an element that has a name. We're going to give it a name, something that's good and understandable by us, and then we're going to give a dimension to it. We're going to give a number, a value, or something. Now, that in itself won't do anything. We then go find certain elements that we want to be the same as that, and we link them. We tie them together. And then what you'll be able to do is change the one thing and possibly have many different things change. It's extraordinarily helpful. So what you're going to do is you're going to come down here, you're going to go to Tools, and then right here you're going to find the formula icon again. You click that and it brings this window up. It's kind of similar to that one that we just looked at, but what I want to show you here is you know, what are we seeing? Well, right now this is again all of the elements, just like again in the other window, that we have made so far. A sketch with some horizontals, some verticals, the dimensional constraints, lengths and such, they're all in here. Now the thing to remember, the part, because this is kind of a screwed up window, is that this piece right here, this element where it looks like you're supposed to give it a name and type something, is this first one on the list. So remember, don't go messing with that, because otherwise you're going to change the first length limit of pad 2. And we don't want to do that, not at least this way, okay? So weirdly enough, what you do is you come down here and you hit new parameter of type. But before you hit that, do you want a length? Do you want a length? Do you want an angle? What kind of a feature do you want? And is it with a single value or more? And this is weird too. I keep finding all these little kind of unfinished glitches everywhere. You have this little drop down and it says single or multiple. Right here it says length, and you would go, well, okay, I guess that's the only thing I got. Well, it's supposed to be a drop down. So if you hit it, you'll get this. The other day I actually had to double click it to get it to come up. So remember, if you wanted to do an angle, that's not a length. If you want to do a real number, like a rotational thing, like how many repeats do you want, like 6, 8, or 10, you might go with a real. All right. So I'm going to leave it at length. Double click there. By the way, you could also just type it in there. And then you hit new parameter of type. So now we have length.1, and we see it show up here in the list. So you come here and you change its name. And we want to call this, how about dimensions? That's good enough. And then you can tab over here and let's just make it 100 for right now, because that's what it is, but you don't have to do this, but just let's go with it. Now when you say 100, and if I were to hit enter, not okay quite yet, you'll see that it updates this. It says die dimensions, and we have 100 millimeters. That's important to know too. Whatever unit you're in right now is what that's going to give it. So then you can hit OK, and then you come over here to parameters and we'll see die dimensions equals 100 right here in the tree. So now this is where things get really slick, and hopefully you can look ahead into the future and see how helpful this could be. First, maybe, I guess, I'll go to my sketch, and this one here is tied to this one. I could leave it that way or I could change it, but right now I'm going to just change this one, and I'm going to say that that is equal to, remember how we did this, not some dimension here, but I come over here and I say that it is equal to this die dimensions right there. And so now this has a formula. When this changes, that'll still change just as it did before. You know, when I make this change, everything will update. So I exit out, and then to test it, come over here and say, okay, great. So it's 100. Let's change it to 200. And you can see that the whole thing, the sketch got wider, so it got wider. But obviously we are not, you know, looking like a game die any longer, so we've got to change something else. So let's go ahead and set this back to 100 just because. And then we go to the pad, and this I think is kind of where the insights come out. You look at this and you go, oh well, we did that in Sketch. Can you do it here too? Absolutely. So you swipe this out, and then you hit equals. But then I have to talk about a little odd glitch. You can't seem to always hit enter like we did before on the other. So just know that there's a couple ways around this. I've seen some glitchy behavior here. V5, no problem. Hit enter, hit equals and enter. And then what should happen is you get a little box up here like we saw in Sketcher that says select the thing you want to associate to. The hand comes out over here and I pick it. but nothing happens, right? Oh, well, it brought up my web page. So it's kind of unfortunate. So I hit escape and I'm back to here. So then what I can do is I hit equals here, and then sometimes I found I can click on the background, then I get it. Check that out. I had absolutely no idea if that was going to happen. So that's how often it works or doesn't work. So then I can come over here and I can pick this, you see? And now it goes gray because I can't change it. It is being controlled via this formula that we did, okay? So pretty easy. But I want to cancel this, and I want to show you one more way to do that, just in case that doesn't work. So let's say we go here, you hit equals, and let's say you hit enter here. Check it out. I did exactly the same thing. No window pop-up, no select. I can't pick it. It's not doing anything. So let's say that that is true and that just happened. So then you give it a shot again. Oh, look, now it works. So now you can do it. But if you just can't get it to work because whatever, maybe in the future when you watch this, maybe everything will be fixed. Dassault has been being pretty good. You know, every couple months or so they've been updating things. What you can do to fix this is you just go straight to the formula section. So right on any field here, right click, and then you'll have the option to edit formula. So you go there. And now, again, remember, this is equal to whatever is here. You could find it in this list, and I can tell you it's right here under rename parameters right there. But let's say you didn't quite remember how that works. So you just come over here and you pick this, and it will get you there. And then what you do is you come over here and you double click this to get it to add up to that window. So I double click that, and then it adds it right there. Hit OK, and now we're right back where we were before. All right, so you hit OK, and now anything we do with this box, with this parameter right here, the box is going to change uniformly. That's the hope, right? So if I go 200, now I've got a 200 by 200 by 200 box. 500, no big deal, okay? So that's parameters, super duper helpful, really, really amazing. You need to use these everywhere. It might be a little bit extra work to get that process done. And you might go, yeah, but this is a one-off part. I'm not going to really be back here changing. There's not many parts like that I've made. There's a lot of parts I thought were going to be that way, but I always end up coming back to edit them, and a nicely placed parameter could really help that. So then I've got one more thing to do for this video. We're not going to make the whole die here because this is already going to be an hour-long video. What I want to do is I want to add a fillet, but we're going to keep with the theme here. We're going to do something kind of creative, something kind of interesting with it. So if you look along here, you know, we can go to Essentials and you keep scrolling along. Here's the fillet that we want right there. If you hover over it, it's an edge fillet. Where would it normally be? Well, is it a thing that makes a model? And so you scroll along the way here. Nope, it's not there. What do I do with it? Do I use it to transform? Do I use it to refine? What do you think? Well, if you go under refine, that's where it normally lives, okay? So I click that, brings up our fillet. Now the fillet is one of these types of objects that allows you to multiply select things. There are certain types of windows that maybe you can only pick one thing, and then you have to do it to that, and then you just have to keep doing that operation over and over again. This one lets you pick multiple things. And so those things that we want are going to be all the edges around here. What you want to be very careful about, though, is that you don't accidentally get the face. You could pick just the face and it would put a fillet around it, but it might not come out the way you want. There could be some valid reasons, let's say. So just for a reason to talk about this, let's say I didn't want that face, but I clicked on it. Just click it again and it should disappear, all right? The preview still shows up apparently, but that's no big deal. So you come along and you hit the edge, and you pick the edge. Now you see that? That's the face and that's the edge. So it becomes really easy to kind of slip. And so then you get that edge, and the next one, so on and so forth. One feature I'd like to see them do is Fusion has the ability to pick edges through parts, which has been very convenient. That's a nice thing. So I get this, roll it around. This is also good practice for learning how to use your mouse to rotate around. Make sure you get all the items. You should have 12 elements up here, and then hit preview and see what it looks like. I think that's not quite round enough for a game die, so let's change it to 10. I can't hit preview. So here's the thing. Whenever you can't do this, this is a lot of programs work this way. This is just not a CATIA thing. So I click on any field that's not going to do something strange, and now I can hit the preview button, or possibly it might even update. So you look at that and go, okay, that's pretty good. We'll hit okay with that. Right? So now our fillet is 10 millimeters, and it looks pretty good. It looks like it's going to roll probably kind of okay, I guess. But here's the thing I want to do. Say I want to change the dimensions here. This is just another little bit of a thing to kind of chew on for the future as you're making parts. So say I want to make this 200 again, right? So as before, it gets bigger, right? No shock there. Then I go 600, and it gets bigger. But now, do you see what's happening? It's starting to look more and more square because the fillet doesn't change along with it. So that's, maybe we want that to happen. Maybe we don't care and we go, I'll just change the fillet because, you know, you don't feel like dealing with the process of going through this formula stuff. I would kind of like to probably say that the more you use it, the more you get familiar with it, the easier that will be. So I come over here to the edge fillet, and I want this to be equal to something. I could make my own parameter just for this, and I change one thing and I change another thing, and you could absolutely do that, and that might be super valid. But if you look at this, this is just coincidentally kind of interesting. This is a 10 millimeter fillet on a 100 millimeter cube. So this is very nice and cleanly 10% of the other, you see? So what I can do now is I can go, let's just go straight to edit formula. So we just go right to here. This is probably where you're going to want to be anyways when you do this type of thing that I'm about to do. You know, it's not just as simple as click something. So I go here to rename parameters, and there's my die dimension. Yes, again, I could have just clicked it. So I double click that. I want this radius to be the same as die dimensions, but I want to say times 0.1. And just that. As long as I looked at this and said, you know what, it does scale properly, it does scale right along the way with this just nicely, then you can hit OK. And again, there's that. It's grayed out with the formula. And now it's sitting here just peachy fine. And then if I go edit the dimensions and I change this to 200, then it still looks the same. I can change it to 1,000 and, or no, 100. I can change it to 1,000 and it gets huge, but when I zoom out, it still has the same kind of aspect ratio here. I almost forgot. I was about ready to say bye-bye, see you guys later, nice video. We haven't saved this. We haven't saved it yet. And I wanted to point out that if you look all around here, down at the bottom, there is no save button. There is a save button up here by this little arrow that looks like it's for sharing, which it is for sharing, but it's also for saving. You could hit that or just hit Control S on your keyboard. Here's the part though that's kind of interesting is I hit it and it saves it, you see, but it didn't ask me what to name it or where to put it, because here's what's happening. It saves it as the name that we created in the beginning. If you didn't give it a name, it's 3D product, yada, 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 whatever number it was, and it puts it into your collaborative space up here. So you want to make sure that you understand how to use the collaborative spaces up here. Just think of them like project folders, if you will. And so anytime you're working on, if it's junk drawer stuff, make one called junk drawer, and you just kind of keep working in there. But if you're going to start up a new project like a robotic arm thing that I'm working on, make a collaborative space called robot arm, and remember to save all your stuff in there. Okay, so that is it for this video. We are definitely not going to finish off all of this right now because I'm sure we're already up to an hour. The next video we're going to work on putting the holes in this die, and as easy and simple as that is, it gives us a lot of practice on clicking on a face, making a sketch, but we'll also utilize all the different formulaic stuff that we learned and parameters in this lesson. Okay, so I will see you then.